Welcome to our Ramble on for the Dream of the Living 90s, or whatever I wrote onto the thing that I made.
Either way, it's the 90s, and they're coming back to bite us. Or haunt us. You decide!
For the next 10 years.
Probably, my god. Ugh.
If you were sick of the 80s before, wait until Stranger Things comes out, and it's the 90s.
It is like you said, this is the nostalgia effect where stuff from like 30 years ago comes back to bite us.
It's a cycle.
It's a vicious cycle.
So, and we were just getting into the 90s as well, so be prepared for the 90s to never end.
Ugh.
Anyways, though, let's just get into our ramble, shall we?
Let's. Who shall we take a scalpel to first? Zim?
Now, as we talked about before, we talked about why we felt what we did about Zim and Rocco and Infinity Train. You can catch those on the American Recuts that we did before, or just a previous video. But we'll also kind of rehash that a little bit here. But let's get right into Invader Zim.
Yeah, and this time with spoilers.
Spoilers. There are spoilers all over the place in these.
So, like Nick said, in case you missed the American Recut, it's a band back together. It's the same writers, same voice actors, but this time let's talk a little more at liberty with the plot. So,
it's such a boilerplate plot, though. This is the kind of generic show that you expect when you hear it got a reboot.
It is, and this is why I put it at the bottom of my list because it was just so underwhelming.
Yeah, they don't really do much with the fact that it's a reboot. You get the usual, it's been a long time since we were here, and then they just kind of ignore it and move on.
Exactly.
You get the same kind of tired jokes, you get the same kind of jokes that you see in a lot of these rebooted things. It feels very safe as a reboot.
It does, yeah, it does. Because, I did a little homework on Zim, and apparently it was canceled. It got a season and a half, and during the second season, it got canceled due to some controversy. There was no controversy that I saw in this reboot. And like Nick said, with this reboot, there came some more polished animation, which kind of made it lose some of its edge.
Yeah, and I think that if you're curious about what the plot is for this one before you watch it, it's a very typical Zim finally accomplishes his plan, but then it goes hilariously wrong.
Yeah.
That's about it.
That's about it. I mean, what else can you say? So
I think that what I can say is that the biggest problem I had with this movie was the characters. Because with something like this, you usually expect that the main characters, Zim, Dib...
Same old cat and mouse.
You'd think that they would have more to do.
You'd think.
They don't. They're barely parts of this movie, in fact. Zim has some arguably good moments here and there, but he basically doesn't fight back at the end. Like, his minions all betray him, he just has a wave of garbage robots that kind of just get destroyed. He's pretty, harmless as a villain, and he's not even an obstacle for the heroes at the end.
Hardly, yeah.
Dib, on the other hand, doesn't do anything in this movie. He's just the protagonist. He doesn't actually cause anything to happen. It's his sister and his father, Membrane, that
the real protagonist, yeah.
Well, he's not the protagonist. He's too overpowered for that. Yeah, and that's an odd thing about this, is that with Membrane, I guess they thought that, I guess he was a fan favorite or something, and he's way the fuck overpowered in this.
Truly, yeah.
He does too many things, he's too strong, and he's strong to the point of being a meme.
Yeah.
There's a part where he literally drops out of space, drops out of high orbits, lands, shoots a Kamehameha wave, and beats up a bunch of aliens before solving the alien moose in order to fix the plot. He does everything.
That's the whole premise of Zim in a nutshell. Oh yeah, so that Kamehameha wave that Nick was mentioning, he has cybernetic limbs, which they introduced in this episode exclusively?
Oh no, he's always had those. He's always been kind of the scientist type, but he never really got the spotlight before. But when I say Kamehameha wave, I don't mean he shot a giant laser beam from somewhere. No, he literally does the pose and shoots it from his hands.
Exactly.
It's painful, not in the way the 90s were painful, but painful in the way that modern reboots are painful.
Right. No, it's it just feels like as we said time and time again, some stuff invokes emotions in you, and this didn't invoke really anything in me. Just this was just a bland, hour time whittling away kind of ordeal. I mean, like this was not time well spent.
And I don't think I have much to say about it beyond that, honestly, even for our Ramble on. It's got some memes, it's got some scenes that did make me laugh, but generally, it was exactly what I expected. Exactly. And it even ends in a place where if they were to beg Netflix hard enough, they'd probably get the show rebooted again in proper.
I mean, they could do it. It is a different era, and some of but who would it appeal to? The original
30-year-olds.
Yeah, no kidding. Ugh. To the fans of Invader Zim, we are not fans, so I apologize.
I like it well enough. Don't put words in my mouth.
Okay, fine. I'm not a huge fan.
Alright, but yeah, I think that you want to just do final summaries of it since we have nothing we're interested in talking about with this.
No, yeah, go ahead, let's do it.
Alright, I think that with Invader Zim, as reboots go, this is very, very much par of the course for your average reboot. It doesn't do anything too risky. It does a lot of things you've seen many times before in these reboots of old shows. And ultimately, it ends where it began. There's no real risks. There's no real gains. Characters are oddly lopsided towards the side characters and the side cast, and kind of moved away from the main cast, which was an odd choice. And I think that this is a bit of a ramble point, but there's this huge focus on this character who didn't exist before, Clone Membrane, which
I
don't know why it got so much attention. He wasn't that interesting. He was a one-note pudding gag character. But yeah, so overall though, it's okay. It's not great. It's fine. If you like Zim, you'll probably like it.
And my summary. It's a reboot that didn't really need to happen. It's not a great allocation of time, so don't bother watching it. Even if you're like a fan of the series, the reboot kind of took away what kind of made Zim kind of interesting. So. And that's my 2 cents on it.
Really, I don't think we have much more to say for the Ramble off this one. Sorry if you're expecting something longer, but it didn't really move either of us.
No, just so bland, boilerplate, safe bland.
But the internet loves it, so that means we're wrong.
Yeah, right. Does the internet really love it? God damn.
Yeah, it's getting some.
Well, they like Professor Membrane. He's definitely going to become a meme.
He already is.
Alright.
Let's talk Rocco's Modern Life.
In the 21st century. So,
Rocco's Modern Life.
In case you didn't watch the American Recut, we touched up on some themes. And these themes are kind of what make this particular reboot better in contrast to Zim.
I think it at least sticks better than previous reboots. But let's focus on this, not Zim. Let's stop talking about it.
Yeah, you're right. So, Rocco's Modern Life. So, the game does come back after 20 years. 20 years exactly, I think.
And right off the bat, we get one of the things that I respect about this one, even if it wasn't something that I liked at the time, which was you have this guy where really big man, I think that's what he's called, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
He does this thing where he just kind of says, like, we're going to do a time skip through my time nipples, and then he, like, swirls them towards the camera. And it's just this humor that's very, like, straight out of the 90s, awkward animation humor that reminds you exactly of, oh, this is why I don't remember this show.
Exactly.
But it's something that's clearly done with a purpose because of how hard they push 2 separate points over the course of this. One, you don't want new episodes, you want the episodes you already have. And 2, sometimes change is for the better, even if you don't like it.
I agree. Those are themes that really stood out, that made this kind of entertaining, I kind of made it easier to swallow.
Yeah, but the lotus of this episode, I'm going to call it an episode because it is just a double-length episode,
I agree.
is Rocco comes back after 20 years, and the thing he's most bothered by is not new technology, new phones, because everyone in town basically behaves the same way they did back in the 90s. Like, people haven't changed, it's technology. But the thing he's bothered by is he doesn't have his favorite show anymore, and he, like so many other desperate sweaty fans before, wants to start a campaign to desperately get the show back and save a failing business. Which he does, successfully.
Yeah. In a nutshell.
And then there's some light commentary from him about, like, oh, we'll just have the machines take care of it. We have animators. They can create a proper reboot. And then they make a garbage reboot and throw them out the window immediately. Like,
yep. You get these downtrodden worms that are just slaving away at a desk for cheap labor, working on cartoons, which, boy, ain't that satirical for modern animation.
Which, I will say, this is one of the very, 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 very few programs I've seen where they're actually willing to point to the animators that are struggling in the film industry and saying, hey, people are struggling, having a hard time as animators, and it's not their fault.
Right.
Which I give them props for having the teeth to at least do that.
Yes, I agree.
The other lows for this episode is around the big heads and their former son Ralph, who is now their daughter Rachel.
Yes.
Who, after going for some soul searching, going around the world, she has learned that she was in the wrong body, and has made the transition. And that's a big part of the theme of change as it relates to the two characters. Rocco, who wants to have his old TV show back and wants some of his basic creature comforts, and Mr. Bighead, who's going through huge changes in his career, in his marriage, and even in his family.
Yeah.
And they both have to learn the same lesson, which is to embrace change, because living in the past is only good for so much.
Right. And the show does say some variation of the same thing we just said, but,
it says it quite literally, with the winds of change. Which, God bless that 90s kind of humor.
Yes.
This is a show where I felt a lot like Duckman, where there was this period in the 90s where you only had two kinds of smart people. The people who only make a single one-liner or quip every episode and are just side characters who are played for laughs. Or the smart guy who constantly goes on like 10-minute long rants about how bad the thing is, and they use lots of smart person words, so they must be smart. It's very much your Duckman, George Costanza kind of smart guy, where because they're screaming and angry, they must be smart. And the show kind of recognizes that and kind of does that as a piss take at times with itself and its science.
Yeah, which is refreshing, I mean, it's not something you would normally see in a reboot. It would normally pander to fans. It would normally show off its new polished animations. And this one, like Nick said, remained consistent with its 90s gimmicks.
In general, it revels in both the good and bad of what it was.
Right.
And I can respect that.
Right.
I think otherwise, though, as far as what to talk about, given that it is just a 45-minute episode length thing, there's not that much to talk about. Like, you get the occasional times where, like, they still pretend like they're trying to sneak things by the censors, even though very clearly the censors don't exist for them anymore.
Right.
Like, they kind of do a little bit of reveling in what they used to like. Like, they talk about, like, choky chicken, they talk about... the Big Hero Man. They do like the gritty reboot of Big Hero Man and him punching him in the face like it was in the old intro. They even do a recreation of the old introduction.
Yeah.
In the episode. It overall feels like they have a certain amount of like hidden pride in what they made, but they don't want to show you that they liked it.
Well, and it's like you said, it's that cringy reminder of, oh God, this is what we watched in the 90s. This
is what I wanted. Oh my God.
No, this show, I wasn't a big fan of the show either, because this, like many other shows like Duckman, this came from a gross period in animation where they tried to push certain envelopes, like there was some scat humor, there was some weird sexual jokes.
The nose picker jokes, the sexual jokes. There's a lot of that stuff where, like, at the time I was feeling like, oh, why would they bring this back? But in retrospect, I feel there's a certain statement of like, they know it's terrible too, and they're just reveling, making me feel uncomfortable. God bless them.
God bless them.
All right. I feel like otherwise though again, we don't have much to talk about here. It's too short.
It is. It's 45 minutes long, so there's not really a whole lot to rave about other than the themes and the progression of it, and its own little satirical jabs at itself.
Oh, and small note about characters. If you were someone that didn't watch Rocko's Modern Life and you thought, well, how come Heifer and the turtle guy didn't get more to do? This is how they've always been in the cartoons. They always got sidelined. They were always there just to be a convenient plot point for Rocko, and then they would disappear.
Wait a minute, who raised their voice about that? Did people really get upset about that?
Of course not. Nobody's talking about this because it's got some bite to it. But yeah, so expect both the good and bad from the 90s version of this. So, final summaries and our final recommendations individually. Brandon, you're starting this one.
I'd be more inclined to watch it, especially for the themes and especially for the whole notion of change. I enjoyed its little spin on change and how it approached it, but all the same, 45 minutes, you could spend that doing something else. There's all kinds of other stuff that's probably better on Netflix. Anyway.
I think this is one where I do recommend watching it. This is one of the very few reboots where not only do they embrace both the good and bad of what they had, but they are very willing to play into the fact that it's a reboot. They call attention to some interesting themes that are going on with the reboot, and they're interested in having a conversation that most others aren't interested in having. I think that it's overall one of the classier reboots I've seen, even if it's for a show that I wasn't hugely interested in at first. This is a show where at the time you might not enjoy it, and this is much more a solo watch than a group watch. But it's one where it sticks with you better than some other reboots that we've seen lately did, especially.
You know what? That was eloquently put. That's true. That's true. All right. Well, that was Rocko's Modern Life, and now on to the next gem.
And final.
Infinity Train.
Didn't work at all. I was trying to do a thing, but all right. Infinity Train.
Sorry.
Infinity Train. This was one that I thoroughly enjoyed. And unfortunately, if you're here for a long dissection, this is going to be short. This is a short series. This is one where, even with the spoiler warning, I still don't want to spoil things because it's good enough that it's worth sitting down and watching.
You know what? Good point. Very good point. Now, we did, like Nick said, we did kind of gush about it immensely in the American Recut, and there's a good reason for that.
Because it deserves it.
Yeah. And, don't take our word for it. Go watch it. We really mean it. Because it is riddled with all kinds of imaginative themes, concepts.
It's got all the stuff you look for when you're looking for an indie darling. It's got gorgeous painted background. It's got characters who have some good depth to them. It's got a situation where you can really go wild with the sense of imagination for the creator and have it all still make sense.
Right.
It's got genuine threats that happen over the course of it a few times, which catch you really by surprise if you're watching as someone who's come to know the tropes of animation in general. And it's got
real struggles.
It's got interesting themes that, even if you're watching with a kid, are really relevant for them, because the focus of this is on Tulip coping with a divorce that her parents are going through. And a lot of the episodes tie in some way to her feelings about that, or the way that she is struggling with some part of it, or some part of having to grow up in a kind of unfair way to her.
Right. Exactly. And also, if I may also insert this in here real quick.
You may.
We are tying this to the 90s theme because there are 90s technologies.
This is definitely thematically taking place in the late 80s, early 90s for Tulip.
Yeah.
Though there is the confusion over why she has a cell phone that's like a flip phone, but that's neither here nor there.
Neither here nor there. Yeah.
Generally speaking, though, this is very much one where, if you grew up in that period, late 80s, early 90s, you probably recognize a lot of things, a lot of influences, and generally recognize the situation. So this is a big part of why we're putting this in here, despite this not being a horrible reboot or being just another in a long strings of 90s references. Because there's a bunch of 90s references here.
Oh, tons. All kinds of 90s technology is strewn about throughout each episode, like VHSs, Walkmans, some late 80s music.
Okay, to be fair, the VHSs are actually pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. No, how they employ VHSs here are actually very clever.
And there's a bunch of legally safe knockoff songs from the late 80s, early 90s that are here as well, which are kind of a treat, honestly.
They are. I do like some of the songs that they employed because I also enjoyed some of those songs back when I was a kid.
There's also a wonderful moment where Tulip is like in one of the rooms where she has to sing a personal song, and at first she's thinking like, okay, let's go for love, let's go for emotions, let's go for things, and she's trying the scientific method, and she finally gets to the song she has to sing. It's like, oh god, this song sucks though. It's got garbage lyrics. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a stupid song that we would sing on car trips. And I love that because it kind of digs into the core of the show, which is that it's not trying to be high and mighty with what its values are or what is meaningful to someone, but it's willing to play that very realistic feeling of what's meaningful is not so much the content of what you're doing, but just how you feel about it.
Yeah. Oh God, I'm sorry. That just hit me so hard. You're right. That's exactly what happens.
I love a lot of what this show does.
I'm just so giddy about it.
I highly recommend watching it. Give it the time that it deserves. It pays off almost immediately, and it just keeps going.
Oh yeah, plot, story. Plot and story are the same fucking thing, but
Yes,
plot, effects, themes, characters—they're all very lovable.
That's right. There's the plot, the story, the things that happen to her, the lessons that they learn through the things that happen to them. All these things happen to it's all synonyms of story.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, since I don't think we're going to be going much more in depth on this show, more out of a concern for getting it watched and getting attention, I think I want to just start with the final summaries and final reasons, and this is the big reason why it stuck with me at least.
Go ahead.
All right. This show is one of those indie darlings that does all the things you expect and still manages to surprise you in places. It's got a story that both takes itself seriously enough that you're invested, but also knows when to kind of laugh at itself and take a step back. It plays with a lot of interesting themes that go from episode to episode for different things that both apply to the main character and are just general life lessons. It has a lot of fun with animation and background design especially, and it ends in a way that's very satisfying for a short series to end and doesn't beg to get more screen time, which is always pathetic when that happens. Overall, this is one that you had your over the garden wall type shows, and this is definitely squares in firmly alongside it. This is not one where you pick one or the other. You watch both and appreciate that there are significant differences between them.
I agree. And then, so now my 2 cents. This is a series I highly encourage you to watch because it has that raw imagination and creative storytelling that just quenches your thirst. It's something that we haven't seen in a while. It's a little oasis amongst this sea of reboots and rehashing. And it leaves you thirsty for more, It's, like I said, I'm just so giddy about this series that it's something it's a nice breath of fresh air.
All right, and then I just want to do this as well as a follow-up to which episode stuck with you the best?
Ooh, I'm going to have to say the ending because the big antagonistic reveal and their backstory, I'm like, as well as how the character tries to relate and try and overcome this adversary is very powerful. It's very,
I think
almost tear-jerking.
I think for me it was the cat train that really got me hooked completely. Which is the train where they get to the cat's actual abode, and that's also the one with the VHS as well.
Yeah.
That was my favorite episode by a mile. I really enjoyed that episode. Though admittedly I did like the Playplace episode too, just for how silly fun it is, compared with the immensely interesting things that happen after the silly fun.
Ooh, or the Mirror episode. That was... Ooh.
The Mirror episode I liked a lot too. But I think that one was a different lesson. And that one wasn't as It was all good. It's all good.
It is.
Watch it.
Watch it, please.
Watch this thing. Don't give shit like Invader Zim and
Rocko's Modern Life.
I like Rocko's Modern Life quite a bit. It had some fight to it, but don't give these boring pale reboots the time they need when there's other things that need the attention on them.
Agreed. It encourages studios to make more stuff like it, because we have had a summer of reboots and we need more stuff.
And if you're looking for recommendations of what might be coming in the future, Villainous is one I've got my eye on.
Ooh, Villainous. Now I haven't heard of that. So give me a synopsis. What's that about?
I'll show you the pilot for it later. There is a pilot. It's free to watch on the Cartoon Network YouTube channel. I highly recommend it. I might toss a link to there in this Ramble on and the yeah.
Yeah. All right. I would encourage that. All right.
Now, the final Ramble on points for the bigger thing.
Right. All right.
This has overall been one really okay reboot where it's not my taste, but I still say it's decent. One reboot that surprised me with how far I was willing to go with a message, even if it wasn't exactly what I wanted. It was still good enough that I liked it. And one new show that's really impressed me.
We've had a decent sample of what to do and what not to do with animation. So take the reboots, I mean, they could be either pretty good or pretty bad. I mean, like, take Zim. It was mild. It was bland. It was meh. Not even worth watching. But we have Rocko's Modern Life, which, while it is the same characters and same writers, they kind of did a good enough rehash where it's new and it's not. But then we have something else that's new and creative altogether. And it works. It really works. All under the umbrella of a 90s theme.
Support your local TV shows.
Yeah. Did what I say just make any sense?
I think it was close enough to making sense.
Okay, good.
It works for me.
That's what I worry about these rambles. If I make sense.
Alright. Well, that is our overall recommendations. Zim was number 3. Brennan greatly disliked it. I didn't dislike it that hard, but it was still nothing too special.
Well, I have bias with both Rocko and Zim, but, Rocko did a good enough job where it was like, oh. Huh.
Yeah, with Rocko's Modern Life, there was something there to chew on after the fact.
Right.
And it was interesting enough that even if it kept some of the not-so-good parts and didn't polish over its flaws, it was still good enough at its core that it left an impression, unlike Zim.
Right.
And with Infinity Train, it's your classic indie darling. There's no way to really express that beyond just the usual, it has everything.
Yeah.
But it is really good.
It is. It really is. Like I said, some animation do's and don'ts. If you're going to do a reboot, don't just demote certain protagonists as to side characters like they did with Zim and Dib. And
I don't know if that's a do or don't or not, because I think that the biggest do or don't for me, if we want to get into kind of this section in general,
please.
My biggest do is do something interesting with the fact that you have a reboot. Give me a reason to care about the show again.
Right.
Don't assume I'm just here to relive nostalgia and nothing else, because I am going to grow bored at the moment I turn off the screen and forget what I just watched.
Right. Like I said, it's kind of fortuitous of us to have this specific sample of reboots or shows so that we could kind of dissect them a little more and kind of draw key lines and concepts of what animation has done so far and where it can improve.
Yeah, this is what I did with the American Recut as well, was I mentioned that these are two very different styles of reboots, dog versus cat. You have the reboot that has a little bit of spite that's been rebooted and questions the intelligence of audiences in general for not wanting something new. Or you have the reboots where they're just so happy to be back and having fun that they forget to actually make anything interesting. Right.
On a side note, though, I'm kind of amazed they did reboots of Zim and Rocko. I mean, Rocko...
Nickelodeon must be desperate. Because the SpongeBob creator died. They need some new blood.
No, don't they blood. That's a good point. Oh, they're struggling. Like, I what are they even showing on Nickelodeon these days?
Mostly SpongeBob, I think.
Oh, that's so sad.
I can't think of what it is.
Oh, that's so sad.
Alright, well, this has indeed been Nick.
And this has been Brendan.
We'll see you around for whatever we talk about next.
Pray for us.
For none above will.